know what I mean? I think it's important to understand what you do.
Okay.
You know,
I was thinking just we begin if it ends up.
if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't,
explain something.
exactly.
Yeah, that's
it should be natural. Welcome to the 21st Men, where we're redefining masculinity through modern manhood. We are the cast. We have a couple of new people, but before we get into that, I just want to talk about, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurialism as well as education and how they kind of coexist. But
Good stuff.
here we are. We've got two new people. Well, actually, one new person, one half a new person because he was here last week. We're going to start out with Mr. Brandon. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people.
I am Brandon Lampley, and my claim to fame and what I'm trying to do is kind of build up sports media. So right now it's just a podcast, which I'm getting ready to go into video, and eventually I want to get to a point where bringing on guests, whether it's athletes or other inspiring sportscaster and what have you, some level of debate once I get me a steady partner. But that's what it is. I'm starting from grassroots and trying to build a brand.
My name is Ahmad Simon. I actually started my own brand, t-shirt line. It's called 14. I'm actually rocking the merchandise right now. And the merch. Yeah. So it's all about that merch. So the brand is pretty much essentially pushing towards your calling, the natural gifts or the purpose that God has placed on your heart to go after it. And so I'm doing that. One and the same in myself as I'm pursuing it as a career with being an artist as well. Do hip hop music. And I share my music, and these guys have all pretty much given me good feedback, so I feel pretty good about it.
Bars
and,
are sick.
So
because I think that's really all what it's really all about in life. Like, you find something you're good at, and then you help somebody else do the same. And be successful.
I think that's important. Networking, it's important. I think on a whole nother level. But a lot of people forget artists as an entrepreneur. I think that's that's not necessarily accurate. I think that they work and hustle probably a little bit more hard.
It's because they're normally called starving artists, and so no one wants to be starving.
So let's just go into it. Let's talk about entrepreneurialism, how that really affects. I know we have a teacher on board, Mr. Christian. You know, one of the biggest things with being an entrepreneur is the feeling that entrepreneurs have about the educational system and how it lacks support of their growth mentality and stuff like that. Do you feel like it's the education system's responsibility to cater to all students as a blanket, or should they cater to students based on how their learning curves are and what they want to do?
Well, it's a mixed bag. The education system has a obligation to differentiate their instruction to meet the needs of certain students, but at the same time, it's up to the student to be flexible and adapt to the environment that they're in. As far as entrepreneurship goes, there are programs, business programs in schools that allow students to pursue that career. However, it isn't emphasized enough about how to go appropriately about being your own businessman or woman. And with that regard, a lot of kids are so naive, they don't think they have to work through the system to get ahead. Sometimes being an entrepreneur means learning the ins and outs of a business by a mentor or the company, and then be starting your own business. Instead, they want to get out of it at 17, 18 years old, and it's very difficult to do. In fact, I don't recommend it for most people on planet Earth because the challenges are facing you head on. And as opposed to learning the ins and outs of a business and adapting to that environment, I don't think that's taught necessarily. So I don't know if you guys, because you're entrepreneurs, if you had to learn from a mentor or the business itself, I'm not sure.
I love how you made sure to talk about the importance of both. You know, you as a teacher being in it,
Right.
You really get to see how valuable, school is. But at the same time, you see where it lacks. And, as entrepreneurs, and I think many people are entrepreneurs and don't even realize it, as entrepreneurs, you have to have a mindset that takes your talents, takes your gifts, and uses those for the good of mankind. And in other words, gives back. And in many ways, giving back could be you being something like a factory worker.
Right.
In many ways, school sets you up to be a perfect factory worker.
Right.
But in other ways, it looks like someone who owns the factory.
Right.
And both sides aren't taught. Usually, the owner of the factory becomes that in spite of the school system. And so I love how you talk about the importance. I think the importance of both sides is everything, because you can't have a factory without an owner, and you can't have factory workers either if there's no owner. They're both important.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I always kind of had a conflict, right, between is the school really teaching what you need to know to be an entrepreneur? And I think it goes back to the mentality is being an entrepreneur the end all be all, right? Is that the real level of success? And if you say that yes, it is, then maybe they are doing a dissatisfaction. But I think you got to think about the school system teaches the masses, right? They're teaching every single person in the United States. That's the goal, right? Some kids don't go to school, whatever, but you know that's the majority. Everybody's trying to go and has to go through the system, right? If you taught every single person to be an entrepreneur, then who's going to work for your business?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you don't teach everybody to be a scientist because not everyone's going to be a scientist. Not everybody's intrigued by science, right? Or developing new vaccines, which
Technology.
I won't even get into that, or getting into technology. Right? So there's a bunch of different things so they try to spread a blanket and they say, hey, maybe out of these 6 classes that you're taking, you're going to find something interesting.
They give you the foundation.
Yeah, they give you a foundation. And I think, a big thing too, it's, especially right now, it's like really, really cool to be an entrepreneur, right? The coolest thing, oh man, I'm an entrepreneur. That's why everybody that does anything
be an entrepreneur.
is an entrepreneur, right? Oh man, I spend my time looking outside. I'm an entrepreneur.
I think that's context. I think it's important.
But so I think that's kind of like the cool thing to do right now. But I think, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, but most people don't have the mentality to be a real successful entrepreneur. That's why the reason people are kind of dabbling into entrepreneurship because it sounds cool, right? Just like another thing that sounds cool right now, being like a hip hop pastor. That sounds really, really cool, right? Like, oh man, like that famous person is hanging out with that pastor, and that famous person is tagging the pastor. So like now they became the famous person.
Nowadays, especially because of Kanye.
Yeah.
I mean, Kanye's not the only reason, but Kanye's a big reason why everyone's like, hey, pastors are really cool now.
But I mean, you could even think about before that, though. You have these really, I think it's really happened when you started developing really big churches. And I'm not saying that they're bad or wrong one or another. I think if God's moving in something, it's going to grow, right? So, but I think, it really happened when, media became so easily accessible, right? You can look at anybody on YouTube. Going back to what we were talking about, before we even started talking, is, everybody that's on YouTube thinks they're famous too. They're all entrepreneurs. And I'm not saying that they are or aren't. I think that they are.
If you want to go to that hip hop pastor thing and talk about how it's mainstream and how that is now, Kirk Franklin. Yeah. Kirk Franklin was the godfather of that. He started all of that.
He started gospel.
Yeah, he started working with secular artists. Even at a time when it was frowned upon, even when people talked about him. Even his time when he worked with Kanye, it was I think it was a couple of years ago, and I think he worked with Kanye and he worked with I think it was Kid Cudi, Chance the Rapper, and all of them when he worked on Kanye's Life of Pablo album, and people gave him a lot of criticism for it. He was like, well, how can I bring these people to Christ if we don't go where they are?
Tasha Cobbs and Nicki Minaj.
Yeah. Like how can you expect them to come to us?
Carl Lance or Justin Bieber, and there's obviously. I think it's kind of like a cool thing right now.
I think that's why I love the 21st Men. It's just that we have faith level people of faith on the show and in the ranks, and also outside of that, we're not a Christian entity, but we welcome all, and I think that's important because those types of things are good to look at.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
I mean, I don't think that the education system is necessarily doing a bad job. I think that there are educators that maybe aren't doing a good job, but. And most people don't want to be educators. But, I mean, where do we put our value as a society?
It's a challenge.
Well, let's talk about the fact that there's no men in teaching roles as much as there should be. There's only 24% of teachers in the United States that are men.
Change.
That needs to change. I think that's important to understand. And men naturally have that spirit about them. I think that is a natural thing for a man, is that first off, we're risk takers. We provide, we go after the goal. I think that consistency should be huge in any man. So teaching a boy to be consistent, like those types of things are important.
Here's what's tough about that though. Who's usually the breadwinner? The man.
I was literally thinking, come on, somebody! I was literally just thinking that.
But here's the thing about this though. In our system, or our westernized system in America, teachers are not highly esteemed. Yeah. And because they're not highly esteemed, they're not highly paid. If you go to places like Finland,
I think it's the other way
Are you
around.
saying
I think they're not
men should be
highly
the breadwinner?
paid because they're not highly esteemed. Because if you paid a teacher $1 million people would be looking up to teachers and like, I want to be just like Christian.
I agree.
Well, let's talk
Right.
about that breadwinner
It's
aspect.
both-
Hold on,
it's
I want
both.
to touch
Well, the
on
reason
it.
why I want to get into the breadwinner aspect of it is because you go to places like Finland,
Mhm.
they actually place teachers. They look at them highly.
Yeah, and their
And
tax
they-
rates are high.
Yeah.
It's like doctors.
But they get paid like doctors out there.
Yeah, but their tax rates are higher, so they don't get paid like doctors.
Yeah, okay, so
Not
it's like-
compared to the United States anyway.
So you're saying it's like New York? I saw a post. I saw a post this morning. It was hilarious. Some girl was like, "Minimum wage in New York is $15. I'm going to New York." And someone posted below, "Who's gonna tell her?" In other words, $15 is pennies.
No,
sweetheart.
what do you think, as far as like being an insurance agent, Justin? What do you think? Did you feel like your education prepped you for being one of those, like being an insurance agent?
I would say the only way to kind of prepped me was studying for the test to get the certification.
That's about it.
Yes.
Well, they did teach you English. They did teach you how to read.
So I have to
Yeah.
disagree.
Foundation. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to disagree a little bit with that point, man. The education system doesn't teach you that. It also teaches you how to talk to people. It teaches you how to make friends. It teaches you how to have relationships. It teaches you how to follow orders, how to do the work, how to write things. The foundation is so huge. I
Yeah,
think
like
people
the
miss that.
indirect.
I agree with what you said. Maybe the specifics of the insurance
Yeah.
aspect of it is correct. You probably need that, but the foundation for being a likable, hardworking individual is laid throughout the aspects of an education system, which is why it's very important and crucial, I think, people to go to education.
That's good. That's good.
I think
That's good. I mean, it's true. That's the only reason why I cope with spending over $20,000 on my education in college.
You so, but
It's the discipline.
well, it's hilarious that you keep talking about that.
And
I know we're
also, you putting an onus on education, of course, but let's also remember that you don't have to go to school. You can be homeschooled. You know,
Right.
and just be as affluent and be ambitious team player as any other kids who go to, whether it's public, some are run down, whether it's private schools, that's what most of the drugs are. Different things like that. Hey, Bishop
for
Kennedy.
sure.
Bishop Kennedy, that's what the drugs are. Come
So, with that being said, back when we were in school and stuff like that, and certain things, I was having a conversation with Ahmad, and we were talking, and he said there was this like program that like he had at school that taught him about like business and money management. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Right, yeah. When I was in school, it was about 10th grade, we had a computer science class. So pretty much the same course that you would go through as you're learning how to type, so one of those foundational skills that you would need. They taught us how to type in that class. Also, we had a program that we went through where you ran your own hot dog stand. And so pretty much you'd have to, buy your own hot dogs, buy your buns,
Yeah.
buy your drinks, and then you'd be in charge of the sales. And so the program allowed you to kind of recoup what was going on for the week, allowed you to see what your income was, what your gross, what your net was. And it was a very interesting class, but interestingly enough, like I never saw any program after that.
You talked about that
after
in
that
10th
class.
grade.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? When I was in college, when I was in high school, we did electives. Do they still do that?
Yes, yeah. So that program he has, we had one at my high school as well, and we have one at the school that him and I teach together, and we have that program too at Mansion High School. But it's not emphasized enough, and I think that's because of the new age and what we're growing up in. The kids are glued to the new fandom of stardom of Instagram stars and YouTube stars, and they're not so much concerned about how to make money the hard way, which is having to find your market, figure out what you're going to sell, what product is
Right.
going to be, that kind of thing. They're more about how can I be famous quick and make money off of that. And so I don't think they're selling it. The schools might not be selling it. I don't think the parents or the students are understanding the concept of that, the importance.
And you need to know that with YouTube too.
Right.
The conversion rates, the understanding, okay, how many views do I have to have in order to get paid this much, in order to get paid that, like how much is the equipment costing me? How much is, all that's important. Oh, I'm just doing it on my iPhone. Well, eventually my brother or my sister, you're going to have to level up your game too.
Right.
Spend more money because when your views go up, you got to go up with it. I think that's important to understand.
Well, that's important, and one thing about that is there are those kids who think about having stardom and making money off that, but don't discount the percentage of kids that are doing it solely for the attention,
Right?
not just wanting to be an entrepreneur and wanting to make their own money. Attention is the new currency of the realm. Yeah, they're doing things for attention now.
Ouch.
To be famous by any means necessary. That's what
Yeah.
we have. And what the problem is, when you see somebody doing something famous for unpopular reason, kids still think it's just famous, so they're going to try and copy that, and because kids will copy and mimic what they see, and so.
So let's take that last 5 minutes and talk about that a little bit. Before we do, I know that you were talking about the attention span, but also parents. who, you can homeschool. I think most parents who don't want to homeschool, they don't want to deal with their kids. They don't want to deal with all that, but they want to complain. So with that, most of those kids probably are the ones who want to have the most attention because they're not getting them much at home, or there might be other caveats. Why do you think those kids are looking for that attention, and how do you think us as men can solve that problem?
Well, I think going to a little bit of a deeper issue with that. One thing about feminism is feminism has taught women that they can have it all, and that's women who are in marriages, who have husbands. They're taught that they can have it all. They're taught that they can have the fulfilling career, the loving marriage, and the well-adjusted kids, and be a great parent. But what they're not told is you can't have it all just like that. Something is going to go lacking in those things, whether it's your marriage, whether it's your career, or whether it's your children. Because if you're spending all your time at work and climbing the ladder, who's raising the kids? Unless the man is a stay-at-home dad or whatever. But let's say both parents are working, because right now we're in a two-income trap in this country right now, and you have to have two incomes to stay afloat with children. So both of you guys are at work. Who's raising the children? Now both of you are at work, and also your marriage goes lacking. So I think that's the biggest part of it.
So, most men nowadays are becoming more stay at home. How do you guys feel about that, and letting the woman be the breadwinner?
I think at the end of the day, it's less about the money and more about identity. And so what someone does really comes down to who they are at the core. And so y'all know me, I bring things back as far as possible, and I think the beginning is always with God. And so I think God has always given us the opportunity to do a lot of things, but at the end of our lifetime, we have to answer according to why He put us here. And even when you look back, I mean, you're in the school system. You understand how important math is. Math is really in line with everything, and it's maybe going a little bit too deep for a lot of people to understand. But numerology, even science, will show you that it has a lot of connections with who you are as an individual. You can literally look at your birthday and your name and line the numbers within your birthday and the numbers within your name and connect it to something deeper within yourself. And I think that was kind of like a blueprint given to us by God so that we can understand more about who we are and how we're supposed to succeed and how we're supposed to walk in who we were created to be. And so when I think about what you're saying, I really think it comes down to that sole fact. So if you being home allows you to have order, then do it. In other words, if order to me is you are providing for your family still. You're in providing is not just financially, it's mentally, it's physically, it's emotionally, it's spiritually. If you're able to do that, then I believe that whatever you decide to do, whether it's staying home or being the one that goes out and gets the money, so be it.
Right. So I think that it's important to really kind of understand that breadwinner doesn't necessarily, in that context, we socially say it's about money, but finding order is really important. I think that's important. And I do believe as men, we provide that order to the household. And I think that if, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I really don't care what anybody says, but like on the other end, like if a woman has a problem with hearing that, that's something that they probably, in my opinion, should really kind of retrospect and look at themselves for.
Or a man.
Or a man, too.
An issue with that, too.
I think that order is provided by the one who leads the family. And I believe men lead the family, whether that is at home. He stayed at home. He prefers to provide more of the structure for the children. He prefers to provide more of that structure for the home. And I think that's important to understand in entrepreneurial. Excuse me. So I think that being an entrepreneur is a mindset, not a business. I think it's important to understand the differences. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Not everybody can set order. And I think that you really kind of helped close that and understanding. I think order makes a good entrepreneur to take it to the next level. Everybody wants a promotion. What's a promotion to an entrepreneur? Creating order, building, creating, all those types of things, like that thing, that order, building, create and makes you an entrepreneur. And you have to have order first to be able to build and create into your next step, whether that's owning a business whether that's being a 1099, whether it's being a teacher, being an artist, being a podcast or a security officer, or a social media manager. Like those things are important to understand on entrepreneurialism and education. I think. Thank you so much for like honestly, I think it's important to understand the foundation is important.
Sure.
Education is a foundation.
Right.
I think in high school, I think they should open it up more and give more classes, but and understanding more career focused type stuff, even in the social media range and the YouTube. But you kind of touched on that. You agreed. But with that, I thank you so much for watching the 21st Men. And as we talked about entrepreneurialism in education, in our home life, and how that really creates our mentality and our mindset.
Last thing, I know we are out of time, but last thing about that, too often when you look at people who have started brands, started businesses, are entrepreneurs, too often we see the highlights. Being an entrepreneur is not YouTube where you go to watch sports highlights, because they don't show you when guys are dropping the ball or jumping outside or
or when 1 month we don't have the money to take care of things.
Yeah. So they don't
Like-
talk about that. So what a lot of kids see is all they see is the highlights.
What the success.
They don't see the lowlights. They just see the success. Right. They don't see the no's. They don't see the red in the bank accounts. They don't see, bankruptcy.
I think that's important to understand. But that kind of boils down to order. I think that you got to set your order and all of that good stuff. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember to subscribe, like, and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, as well as Twitter. Thank you so much again, Ahmad, for coming out and being there. Again, follow his brand. Go ahead and mention your Instagram for them so they can follow.
My
it.
Instagram handle is my name, Ahmad S_.
Thank you so much for watching The 21st Man. Have a good day.
I do believe it's something. I do believe